You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. Today I'm talking with Sayinthen Vivekanantham, the founder of a legal tech, prop tech product called Homey. And conversation today is talking about what Homey does, what it is, how it works, and how it can facilitate better conversations between estate agency and conveyancing. And beyond that, talking about general state of play in and around the sector. Dare I say, there's a possibility we may even touch on referral fees as well, which can be an incendiary discussion point. It's great to have you on the podcast, though, Say. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Let's dive right into my first question, which is always, who are you? What do you do? I know that Homey, for example, is not your first career, on the basis that on your business card it says Dr. Sayinthen Vivekanantham.
Yeah, well, so I started off life as a medical doctor and sort of ended up in this space in a very unusual way. So I started off in the turn of sort of 2008, 2009 when prices crashed. I thought, if property's always gone up in value, if suddenly values fall quite dramatically, that's probably quite a good time to get in. So whilst I was a doctor, I managed to buy a small place, did it up, made every mistake in the book, but managed to turn a profit on the property. And after doing that, I thought, okay, right, this is quite a nice bit of side income. Let me try and repeat this process. And one property sort of turned into 25 over the course of 15 years. And I thought, okay, well, now that I understand a lot about the property game and how different people are sort of interacting, let's actually leave my medical career and try and build a product that's really going to allow people to work better in this very complicated process between multiple stakeholders. So that's where we are today. But yeah, my first career was a doctor. So I was working as a doctor up till a few years ago, and now I'm focusing on Homey, which is sort of serving a number of estate agents and law firms up and down the country.
You may be able to tell us which is more difficult a sector to work in, the NHS or property, given all the challenges that we have at the moment. But you've launched Homey as a bit of an effort to solve some of the challenges that the sector faces. Tell us about what Homey is and what it does.
Homey has two sides to it. So we have an estate agent / referral facing tool, but we also have a lawyer facing tool. We ultimately allow lawyers to generate more money from a captive referral base that they have and they're looking to harness. But we also allow lawyers to speed up their customer onboarding journey through using best-in-class technology to allow their customers to complete their CCLs, their client questionnaires, their TA forms, their searches, their money on account. All of that is done in a single end-to-end process in one place. I'm regularly told by our clients that the onboarding process, which normally takes a couple of weeks at a time, often gets done in under 12 and a half hours as an average on Homey.
You've recently come out of an exclusivity period with some London estate agents that I know you were working with. Tell us about the lessons from that experience. And I've got some follow-up questions as well from what you said, but start with that one, please, Say.
So the lessons I've sort of learned are very much about some of the vested interests that there are in this process. When I came into trying to build technology in the space, it was interesting to try and start to understand how actually some of where the value lies in this process. With estate agents referring work to law firms, how much of the value actually lies with estate agents and how much of it lies with law firms, and whether that balance was right. For me, I'm just the measly technology provider. I don't have too much of a say in how sort of these commercial relationships work, but it was interesting to see where the dynamics are and in some ways how some stakeholders are mistreated, right? Because if the client is sort of controlled from further up the process, then when it comes to a downstream process and just sort of being referred to a certain place, and then most of the value is being sort of captured upstream, it's often not very fair on people that are downstream. So at this point in time, I'm just an onlooker, just trying to look and see how the market operates. We look to build tech that works for any one of our stakeholders, no matter what commercial relationships they have. We're not confined to working in a certain way. But it's just been interesting to kind of see the inner workings from behind the scenes.
Vested interests, mistreated stakeholders. There's only one thing that we can really be alluding to here. This is referral fees, presumably.
Yeah, there is that's definitely part of it for sure. Yeah, there's referral fees it's always a contentious subject. It depends where you lie within that value chain on how often you perceive referral fees to be. But yeah, it's been interesting for us to see how that happens, within the context of building technology for everyone.
So in the trial that you've undertaken, these firms that you're working with, they are actively looking to achieve referral fees using your system, are they?
Yeah, so Homey works in a way where we adapt what we do to whoever our client is. So David, let's say you're setting up a law firm today. You have a number of different estate agents, a number of different mortgage brokers that may be referring to you, and you may have some complex or simple, commercial relationships with these different referrers. So what we would do is we'd come in and we'd say, okay, right, today you work with XYZ. How can we make it easier for XYZ to refer work to you? But number two, once XYZ has referred work to you, how do you make sure that their clients can get onto the system and get onboarded with you guys at a speed that is not possible anywhere else? So how do you make, and we know that there's a lot of drop off in that onboarding process. Customers see another house down the road, or customers, don't fill out the paperwork and it just goes, deals fall through. So what we do is we say, hey, okay, right, how do we give you the tools with your combined referrers to make that process as fast as possible?
Can you drill into that a touch more, then say, how does that work at an operational level?
So after, David Conveyancing Limited, right, has been set up, we will invite all of your referrers onto David Conveyancing Limited's platform. Once you're onto that platform, they can send you referrals at a click of a button. They can type in 3 details, send over the details, but also at the same time, the actual quote that you would normally charge for that type of referral would automatically be generated so that they can share that quote with their said customer. Now that said customer can now instruct you at a click of a button. And once they've instructed you, they can then fill out all the different paperwork, including, TA forms, CCLs, your specific letters of authority, and any other details that are specific to you, all in one workflow, so that basically the customer is able to go from start to finish a lot faster than currently the way the world works. So normally the process is, estate agent would email over a quote to you. You would then have to pass that to the relevant person. They would then email back or send a quote out, sometimes via post, to the customer. Customer will then maybe do the same thing with 3 or 4 different law firms, and then they would then choose which one they're going to go with. And then they'd have to then, email back. They'd then have to be emailed back a client care letter, sign the client care letter, and then there'd need to be then shared bank details. So that process can take, 2 weeks at a push. What we've done is we've built the technology to allow that to happen within hours. So rather than that take place over this extended period of time, everyone's in the same place. Everyone knows exactly what's going on, and they're able to get from beginning to end in record times.
A couple of things really come to mind around that. Say, one is that, are we doing away with the personal touch here if we're not too careful? And secondly, one of the big challenges that conveyancers face, particularly with referred work, and where they haven't had that opportunity perhaps to have the conversation with the client, is that they may pick up on some complexities that exist within the matter that simply aren't quoted for or aren't accounted for at the point of instruction. Is there a way that you can kind of deal with that in some way?
Let me answer the first one. So we're definitely not trying to do away with the human touch. And if anything, we're trying to allow more time for the human touch, because stuff like sending things via email, sending details and allowing the consumer to then make bank transfers for money on account, all of that takes more time. And these are steps that if you take those steps which take a lot of time out of the equation, you then enable the customer to have more time to actually converse with the conveyancer. Even as such as things like, filling out a form. So most conveyancers will send out, a questionnaire via email, and they'll be like, oh yeah, fine, Mr. Customer, go and fill this form out and return it back to me. Ball's in your court now. But what they don't realize, I've been in this position, with the multiple places I've bought, right, is that, okay, they've sent me a form via email. I don't have a printer at home, so I have to go and find a printer, right, and then I have to print it out, and then I need to then fill it out, and then I need to then find somewhere to scan it. And invariably, when I scan it, it gets scanned into the wrong format. When you scan it, the file size is too large that you can't attach it onto email. So you then end up kind of trying to work out how you send it to the conveyancer. So you're just like left with you as a consumer are completely left in this limbo, right, where you've been forced into this scenario because the conveyancer has a certain way of working, rather than being given a really easy centric tool where you can on your phone fill out all the details you need and hit submit, and it all gets populated and it's all done within hours. By taking away all that pain, you give the customer and the agent and the lawyer much more time to work better collaboratively. And and this is only the starting point, right? We're going to be building further into the transaction and building in all sorts of directions from here. But this is how we enable customers' lives to be better, number one. And then, number two, there's always this concern that you're going to quote for something which turns out to then be more complicated. But again, that doesn't need to, again, happen at a conversational level, right? There's ways to speed up that or get a more accurate quote through asking the relevant questions when you're generating that quote. So let's say agent's loading a lead into the system, or even if if it's not even an agent, it could be your own sales team loading that lead. When we're integrated with the land registry, so we know whether that title is an unregistered title or not. If it's unregistered, what is your unregistered fee? And the system automatically populates that. Done, right? Then as you go and add your mortgage lenders, our system can tell, does the mortgage lender accept search indemnity? And is search indemnity a better tool to use or better item to use or not? So you can then choose a search indemnity product over searches. But just like that, we also do bridging finance, whether it's buy to let, whether it's mortgages. It's not just hey, this is a bog standard random quote. This is a tailored quote to what the customer needs. And then, when they then go on to fill out their transaction information form, if there's any other discrepancies that have emerged from what the quote was generated for, the conveyancers can know exactly what, at the very start of the transaction, they can know if there are any further complexities that wasn't covered in the quoting stage. So it just brings that process to the 21st century. It's currently a process which is operating in a way that is very old school. Most conveyancers do it via phone calls and discussions with their customer. But unfortunately, that is not customer centric. And unfortunately, those law firms will get left behind as technology moves on. And Homey is a tool to stop them from being left behind and allow them to grow their businesses and continue to be thriving businesses which prop up our economy.
And presumably using a platform like this negates the need for email, for example, which, as we all know, is pretty insecure.
Correct, 100%. So, we're at the moment we're just doing the onboarding journey. Later we may go on to other parts, but in this onboarding part of the journey, you've got all this sensitive information like bank details, personal identity information. That's all going via email, which is very easy to be intercepted. And this gives an online secure platform, password protected platform, which people can share information on. So yeah, we immediately attain a level of security that currently there isn't in the process.
I said that we'd probably come on to referral fees, and I do want to, but before I do that, just to finish off this point around the technology side of this, a lot of the time I hear the challenge about this is another system, another platform that I have to use or log into with a new set of data standards and all this kind of thing. Is Homey aligned with the work of the Open Property Data Association and making sure that your information is transmittable between all the other technology out there? And then secondly, have you got a strategy for integration so that we're not continually logging in and rekeying and that kind of thing?
Yeah, 100%. So yes, the answer to that question is yes. We think that's a great initiative. I think it's amazing that the industry is coming together to make things standardized. So we're big supporters of the work that's done there, and we've done everything in our platform to make sure that it's compatible with other solutions that are emerging. Right now, there are case management tools. Most law firms have case management tools, and for us, we always commit to any customer that commits to use our platform. We then commit to build an integration with whichever case management tool they use. Essentially, after the onboarding process is done, the case magically appears in their CMS, so they don't have to rekey any of the information they receive.
Referral fees. So you're talking about a system that encourages or at least entertains the opportunity to make referral arrangements between these organizations. Does Homey have a view on this? Does it have a stance on referral fees? Do you actively encourage? Do you discourage? What's the experience that you've had from the trials that you've undertaken?
A lot of people try and be utopian about this, and I think there is a adverse effect that referral fees have on conveyancers, because it does squeeze their margins and does squeeze ultimately what people are able to make from the transaction. But on the other hand, this is the way the industry currently operates, right? A significant volume of transactions which are referred from estate agents to preferred conveyancers go through with referral fees attached. And if you, as a technology platform, say, hey, we're not going to be in support of this, or we're not going to allow or cater to this recognized way of doing business, you basically build a solution that doesn't work in today's world. So I think what the world does need to address is the fact that lawyers need to earn more, and we need to work out how we can encourage lawyers to make bigger fees. We don't do that by banning referral fees and banning the way, or banning or segregating and stopping certain mechanisms to work that already exist, not work through the platform. So I imagine your next question, David, would be, how do we do that, right? So how do we get lawyers to earn more, right? And so, look, from my perspective, if you come on to the Homey platform, right, we're building tools to enable the transaction to be faster and faster and faster. So whether that be, we've done speedy onboarding today, right? Tomorrow will be, how do we optimize and make the inquiries process smoother? How do we then, make exchange and completion smoother? And there's great technology in all of these verticals which is emerging, which we can leverage and build into the workflow. Things like, there's a great technology on inquiries, from Legalito. They're doing some fantastic work. And then, there's some great technology coming in on exchange and completion stuff, with PEXA and with places like ShieldPay, who are looking at how do we transfer money digitally. So if we can start to allow lawyers to leverage some of this technology, and maybe from then they can then go on to say, hey, okay, this is my one mechanism or one platform through which I can become end-to-end and offer a faster conveyance. And if lawyers can then commit to a faster conveyance, that can be a way that they then up the amount of fees that they're able to earn. So they may say, okay, right, I'm going to commit to a 4-week timescale to get to exchange. If we get to the exchange in 4 weeks, we will need to command X fee. And so the customer and now the lawyer and the agent are now, all their incentives are aligned, because the lawyer is able to get an additional fee as a result of getting the transaction to a point of completion much faster. So they want to get the deal done quicker. The customer gets the transaction done faster, and the agent gets their commission faster. So now you've got 3 parties that are completely aligned, and now you have a more successful chance of a better working relationship, and the lawyer gets paid more. So those are the mechanisms through which I believe that we can start to get lawyers to earn more.
Certainly you won't get any arguments from here about the fact that we've got to look at how we can put up fees and how we can earn more money. Of course, the flip side to that is that you have firms sort of saying, as you quite rightly pointed out, well, the referral fee is eating into my fees. Here's a slightly left field question. Say, what kinds of objections are you coming up against when it comes to the adoption of tools like Homey? We've kind of talked through a few of them, I think, today, but is there anything else that people are presenting as an objection to why they're not adopting the growing number of technologies that are out there that have the potential to improve the home moving process?
When we speak to conveyancers and lawyers, it often starts off as a no. It often starts off as, oh, okay, this is a change. This worked for me fine for the last 20 years, right? Why do I want to change? Or it's, I've got other priorities right now. I can't move into, I don't want to focus on building or using another tool. I've already got other tools in this process, right, which the team are used to. So often it's around 2 or 3 things. It's aversion to change, fear of the unknown, right? It's a new way of onboarding new things, new technology. It's difficult for people to accept all that newness and whatever's unknown. And the third thing is lawyers are generally very conservative, risk-averse individuals. They don't want to change. They don't want to take any risk with anything, let alone their business, right? So those are the main sort of themes of objections that do come about. But once we are able to have a conversation with a lawyer and show them the value add, a client onboarding time going from 2 weeks to under 24 hours is life-changing for a firm like that, right? Because it means that every transaction is now 2 weeks fast forwarded, right? It gives their clients a much better journey. So, on the whole, I'd say most lawyers that we speak to, they may always, most of the time they start off as a no, but they always convert to a yes at some point, and it may not be a right now thing. It might be okay, we'll speak to you again in 6 months, but then at that stage it is a yes. And on the whole, I've seen that lawyers are forward thinking, but it does take them a little bit of time to get to a stage where they can see the positives.
As we kind of come to the end of the podcast, I've been thinking about some of the conversation that we've had, particularly around referral fees. I've often thought, or it's been put to me, that referral fees are a cost of acquisition payment, in the same way that a lot of businesses might pay Google, for example, to do pay-per-click advertising, or pay a marketing agency to support them with some of their objectives. There's a very real cost to client acquisition. I get the point where people say, well, you just get directed to a conveyancer that doesn't do a particularly good job. There's ways that we can kind of get around that. But ultimately, whether it's a platform like yours that facilitates it, or as you say, this is a practice that is accepted in the sector, and therefore building a technology solution that doesn't facilitate it makes no sense. They are here to stay, certainly for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the one point to sort of zoom out and sort of look at, and I can completely resonate with this being a doctor, right? Because, I'm a doctor, my sister's a doctor, and when I definitely had my doctor mindset, I definitely was not a businessman, right? I was not commercially minded or thought in a commercial way. And unfortunately, the vast majority of the legal profession also has the same sort of training. Lawyers see their job as a vocation. They see it. They're not very money motivated. They're motivated by doing a good service. That is very admirable, but unfortunately, it's not a public sector job. It's a private sector job. You have to make the right commercial decisions for your business to grow, and ultimately for you to do the right thing by your staff and your other shareholders, if you have shareholders in your business, and grow something that is going to work and thrive with time. So lawyers need to be able to start to think commercially, and Homey allows them to have the ability to distribute referral fees immediately on instruction, with some upfront payments that are collected from the customer, so that you incentivize your referrers to pass over these leads faster than currently the way the system works. Ultimately, if you don't decide to do this, that's fine, but ultimately you're increasing the likelihood that your businesses are going to die, right? You're increasing the likelihood that you're going to end up in the Gazette with the hundreds of other firms that are closing every single month, right? Because they can't sustain their businesses. So lawyers have to think more commercially, and they have to understand that every other business, including our business, has a cost of acquiring customers. Like, right now I'm on a salary, my time is being taken to, do this podcast. It's costing the company time and money, right? But that cost then translates into, customers then gravitating towards our platform. And it's a cost that we're willing to take on because it brings us customers. Now, in the same way, lawyers have to be willing to say, okay, right, this referral fee is a cost of acquiring that customer, and it'll probably cost more if I went and had to do some pay-per-click advertising on Google or some, flyers or whatever else, tends to work in that industry. So it's really a question of, do you guys want to survive, right? And if you want to survive, get on with the times. This is the way that the world is changing. Let's get on with it. Let's build something that works, and let's do the right thing by your staff and team, and let's try and make a great business. And if you don't want to, then ultimately you will be limited, and time will tell whether these types of businesses survive or don't.
Strong words, and I wholeheartedly take the point around the vocation and the profession side of what you've said, because at the end of the day, a doctor becomes a doctor because they enjoy medicine and they enjoy treating patients. A lawyer becomes a lawyer because they enjoy the legal side of things. And certainly there's a lot to be learnt about running businesses, no two ways about it. It's been great to have you on the podcast, Say. Hugely appreciative of your time, and hasten to add that you haven't been paid for your time either. So it's been great to have you here. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, David.
The Today's Conveyancer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. Also available on todaysconveyancer.co.uk. My thanks to Say. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.